it's uncertain. When all of this happened, we initially just sort of thought to ourselves, there's no way that this project is going to happen now. But the reality is we're half built. So that was a shock for us because now it's sort of, just the great unknown.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. The impact of the COVID-19 pandemic has created a lot of uncertainty about the future of the hospitality sector. What kind of restaurants will we see? What kind of experiences will we desire? Vicki Wild is one of the world's best restaurateurs. Together with partner and one of the world's best chefs, Martin Benn, they took Sepia to dizzying heights. With a string of accolades, they made the top 100 list of the world's best restaurants. In the middle of creating their next restaurant at 80 Collins Street, touted by many as an establishment Australia has never seen, a global pandemic changed the landscape underneath their feet. Vicki, how are you going?
I'm great, and you?
I'm good, thank you. I wonder if we could start by just, if you could give us an image of what the immediate impact on you was in that first few weeks when the pandemic and the lockdown happened.
Yeah, to be honest, I think I was in denial about it all in the very beginning, thinking the media was blowing everything out of proportion, and so it didn't really hit me at first. And I don't think it actually hit me until they announced the 4 square metre rule. And I saw the reality of what a busy restaurant like Chin Chin could look like, with very few tables. And then I think the impact, really hit home to me. I understood at that point that, this was really happening. And just over the course of a few days, the cafe where I get my coffee every day was doing, virtually no business because all of the corporate customers were working from home. And every day it just got emptier and emptier. And then I remember being in the head office here at Lucas, and the devastation at the group when they had to stand the staff down. Everyone understood the situation, but they just all seemed so lost. And it really hit all of us, really hard. It was actually quite difficult to watch without getting emotional. And then the emptying of the city, it just seemed to happen so fast. It was really surreal. And I guess because, we're looking at the industry now from the sidelines because we're not actually in our own restaurant. And I look around at what everyone in the industry is doing, and I can't believe it. I'm so astounded at how our peers are, adapting and being so flexible. It just makes me so proud. I think it's really, really incredible because Martin and I are often talking about, how we would have handled it and how, what we would have done. And I think, how would we manage financially when, while everything is in lockdown, and how would we manage financially when business re-emerges? And we've been over these scenarios time and time again. And I think that, the recovery, it's going to be difficult, I know that, but what I do know is that we will get through it. I must admit, it makes me kind of heartbroken to think that, some people won't survive because I know how much sacrifice you make to run a small business and how devastating it must be, to have to lose something that, you've built. Because we understand what it's like to close a restaurant. It's really hard, and it's actually harder than opening. But it's probably one of the hardest things that we've ever had to do. But that was our decision, and we were in control of that. So to close in this way, I can't even contemplate. When you're not in control, it's it's just all about survival and looking after your people. It's really quite heartbreaking and devastating, Huckstep. I still don't think it's actually hit me, to be honest.
When I remember talking to you a lot in the days when you had Sepia, and obviously I had a little bit of involvement in the book that you and Martin put out, and I got to know you guys fairly well during that period. And, you know, you had arguably Australia's best restaurant at the time, and, and it was on the global stage, and yet the margins were so slim. And I guess just listening to you now, that feeling that trying to survive through something like this when margins are slim in good trading periods, it paints a difficult picture for what might happen in the future and the state of the industry once we get through this.
I guess I think a lot will have to change in our industry, to be honest, because even when I look back at how we started our business, I mean, we were kind of naive, and you don't open a restaurant like Sepia for money alone. And I think if this pandemic has taught us anything, is that we really have got to be financially sustainable. We really do have to have a good business plan, and it's not a folly, because people's lives are at stake. And to be honest with you, good, right, wrong, or indifferent, the great majority of people go into the business and restaurant businesses with the right intent. I don't think anybody ever goes into this sort of business to, for any other reason, except that I guess we're creative people at heart, and we're just following our passion, and we just love to look after people, and we accept that the margins are slim. But I don't think we ever really think about the risk, because we don't ever really think that something like this is going to happen. And maybe we need to think about that in future.
Now, you and Martin and Chris Lucas have been working on a project at 80 Collins Street for quite some time now, and that was due to open this year. What's the current situation with the restaurant and the plan, given the uncertainty of the landscape once we get through this?
Yeah, well, it's uncertain. When all of this happened, we initially just sort of thought to ourselves, there's no way that this project is going to happen now. But the reality is we're half built, or more than half built. But from a business perspective, from the group's perspective, their existing restaurants, rightfully so, are priority right now. So that was a shock for us, because now it's sort of just the great unknown, and naturally there'll be delays, much further, and so much has to happen before that even happens. There's got to be cash flow within the group for us to be able to to continue with the project, but. Martin and I are just keeping our heads down. We're just continuing to work, and we're probably doing creative things that we wouldn't ordinarily get time to do. So I guess from that perspective, it's really good. But,
What are some of those?
Well, we're actually looking at, more recipes. I mean, Martin has been incredible about the amount of creativity and recipe development that he's done in the past 12 or so months. I didn't think he had another space in his brain for anything, but he's he's certainly moving on. But also too, we've got to keep other people motivated, because we've already assembled our key team. And, they're really eager to get going, and everything's kind of on hold, but with everything up in the air, we just want to keep everybody thinking creatively, because, chefs and restaurant people, they want to work. They want to do things. It's not about being, in a job per se. They just need to be kept busy, especially chefs. They don't want to lose touch. So none of us expect that anything's going to happen really quickly. And whilst, we all want to for this to happen quickly, we have to make sure that we're re-emerging, for want of a better word, carefully and thoughtfully, because, we've got a long way to go yet. But we are really optimistic for the future. Thankfully, people love restaurants and the social nature of them. So,
what is it that you love about restaurants? And I know, talking to you in the past, you've always talked about creating magic for people and taking them out of their everyday lives and creating something special and wowing them. What is it about restaurants that you love?
I think for me it's always been about the energy and the atmosphere, just that excitement. And I've always had that. I've always been intoxicated by the atmosphere and the magic, the things that happen in restaurants. And, magic does happen, and it's not always, the food. But I think also too, it's the fact that it's about people. And people in restaurants, they care. And they're really, really creative. And I think what I really still love and miss so much about restaurants is just that unknown, that start of service when you know that anything can happen tonight. It's never the same. And you always get that sort of pre-service tension or, nervousness, because you just never know which way it's going to go. And no matter how perfect your team is and how well trained, anything can happen in a night. And I think I kind of like that excitement. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. What are some of the great dining experiences or restaurant experiences that you've had?
Oh, God. So many. And if I think about the great restaurant experiences that we have had, it's always about that atmosphere and the excitement and the service. And it's actually usually about the service. Obviously, the company you're with is a great thing, because if you could be dining at the world's best restaurant, and if the company's not great, you just don't have a good time, no matter how good the food is. But,
True.
But I think, I think for Martin and I, the best experiences we've ever had is always about atmosphere. I mean, we've had some amazing food in Japan, and usually it's in those small, convivial, family-run restaurants, opposed to fine dining, as opposed to fine dining, I mean. And dining in New York is always memorable because it's exciting, it's fun. And, we were just there in February, when all of this was just starting. And, we came back and we thought about, what was the best experience. And, we went to a little Italian restaurant in the village, and there was a waiter, and his name was Matty. And he just read us perfectly, and he knew that he had it nailed that we were obviously restaurant industry people, and he just kept us laughing the entire night. And it's just something, you remember their names. And, a year ago when we were in New York again at the Grill, we had this incredible, very New Yorky waiter called Justin, who just made our night. And so you remember their names. And at Le Bernardin, there's a guy called Tommy who just is a classic New Yorker as well. And, I think it's people like that, it's the staff, it's the people that make those experiences what they are, I think. or certainly for us.
Do you think this pandemic and the lockdown and the fact that we don't have restaurants to enjoy anymore is going to shed a new light on the front of house and service in Australia?
Look, without blowing my own trumpet, I know that my customer service has been, for the most part, really highly appreciated. With the guests as well as the teams that I've worked with, and our guests, our regular guests from Sepia, they still email me all the time asking, when are you going to open? How are you? All that sort of stuff. They're really, really loyal people. It's quite special. As I said before, the most fun we've ever had in restaurants is because of great service. We don't go out to analyse and critique the food. Life is too short for that. So, look, whether sometimes maybe it doesn't need to get recognised, and then that's really good service. But I think, people go back to restaurants because they know people, they get recognised, they get looked after, they're treated special. Restaurants are special, especially the sort of restaurant that, we've been involved in.
You and Martin have done some pretty incredible things together, and you're partners in real life, and you've run restaurants together, you looking after the front of house and operations, and Martin being the culinary genius that he is. How do you work together?
We get asked that so often. The truth be known is we've sort of really only ever worked together, so that's what works for us. When we don't work together, the dynamic's just not right. I remember when we went to Hong Kong and the company that we were consulting to over there sort of put us in different directions. I was working on the island, and Martin was working in TST, and we were on the phone with each other, like 25 times a day. So, we sort of feed off each other. And thankfully, where we're working here in Melbourne, I think, Chris and his, management team, at first they sort of thought that it was, kind of unusual that they'd ask one of us a question and ask the other a question and get the exact same response. So they now sort of look at us as if, okay, if you're asking Martin something, you're asking both of them. If you're asking Vicki something, you're asking both of them. So they kind of understand that they're talking to the one person. Because we both really understand the front and the back of restaurants, and we're both equally interested in the other. I don't know, we're really lucky actually that we do enjoy working together. It's strange, and I don't expect people to really understand it, but it works for us. It really does. It doesn't work when we're not together.
Do you think that this experience will change what you'll do with the project once everything gets started again? No. It really, to be honest, it won't. Our vision for this restaurant was always to be a more accessible restaurant, so that hasn't changed. We certainly have to, honestly, just day by day have to look at how things are unfolding and how, as things start to open, just see, what the reaction is. But look, we've never really wanted a restaurant. Even when we had Sepia, we didn't want it to be about a chef's philosophy. We didn't want it to be a narrative-driven concept. We've never had an intention of being a stiff, fine dining restaurant that, where you can hear a pin drop. We've just never wanted that. So from that aspect, it hasn't changed. All we've ever really wanted was a really busy, energetic, exciting restaurant, like the ones that we enjoy. So, I guess, will it be, our vision hasn't changed? No, it hasn't. I wonder, you may not want to answer this in too much detail because I know that you like to keep your cards close to your chest in regards to the project, and you've, delivered some of the information out there on what it's going to be, but can you tell us about what the vision is for the restaurant and what we can expect?
I knew you'd ask something like that. Well, the vision is, and this might sound really strange, but what we want is a real restaurant. So, because, you know, I guess at heart Martin is, and as you well know, he's a fairly shy character. He takes a while to sort of get to know people and get comfortable. He just sort of puts his head down and lives in a bubble. But so I think, you know, he's never really been very comfortable with, you know, being in the limelight. It's always me that's sort of pushing him to do things that he doesn't really want to do. But and whilst he understands, you know, that he has to do some things, it's not something that he's terribly comfortable with. So he, you know, even from the get-go, you know, when we opened our own business, you know, we really wanted a real restaurant that was buzzy and had regulars, and, you know, that people really wanted to come to be convivial and, you know, to enjoy and to, you know, all of that sort of thing. And I guess if the food was great, then that was a bonus. You know, so, but you know, we opened in the GFC, so we had to listen. We had to listen to our, you know, our clientele, our customers, and we learnt, you know, to adapt because we saw the reality and the possibility of failure in our first year. You know, and looking back, we kind of went into a survival mode. You know, we just put our heads down and got on with it, and that, I suppose, appealed to Martin because, you know, he could just kind of stay in the kitchen and, you know, just do what a chef does. And then when we got recognised internationally, or, you know, and Martin became, you know, well known on an international scale, you know, we certainly didn't begrudge it because, you know, like, it's an amazing, incredible thing. But, you know, there's a certain expectation when you do that, when you do become renowned, and he just never really wanted to get on that, you know, that chef forum bandwagon. That there's absolutely nothing wrong with anybody else doing it. We totally understand it, but it's just not his shtick, if you know what I mean. It's just not what drives him. And I think he felt really polarised by, you know, having to do that. So, and in a way, you know, he sort of begrudged that side of the business because he's only ever really wanted to be a chef in his restaurant and run, you know, that kind of place. So I suppose when we got to the end of Sepia, you know, the notion for us that, you know, we wanted to change and do a different type of business was really going back to the fact that, you know, Martin, he doesn't want to be on that merry-go-round. We enjoy our life, and we've got so many interests outside of restaurants that, you know, we've always wanted to have that work-life balance. And, you know, for the future, for us, you know, the whole thing that made sense about us joining, you know, the group was, you know, in a way, and it sounds strange to say, is that we felt like we've bought ourselves another 10 or 15 years because we can really grow as restaurateurs. We can, you know, we can train people and we can mentor and, you know, we can be a really good role model for the future. And that's what we want, you know. And so there was no expectation from Chris or the group here that Martin had to be that sort of celebrity chef, and it was quite the opposite, actually. And so that was one of the, you know, one of the big decision makers, because he just doesn't want to be that sort of person. I think he, you know, probably quietly envies people and other chefs that can do that. But you either are or you aren't, and, you know, he's much more comfortable not being that person. So this restaurant really is, we've gone back to what we originally wanted Sepia to be, and that's about the guests. about the people that dine there, about giving them options, about making it exciting, making it fun, making it convivial, not there to critique, not there to tick a box and say, I've been there. And, so I think, we feel like we've come full circle in terms of the restaurant that we want, because Sepia ended up being something we didn't really want because we had to kind of survive in the global financial crisis. So it's funny how that happens, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think real restaurants is what people are going to want on the other side of this, that real engagement.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's how humans are wired. Gone are the days where, when you look at it now, you think, God, the things that used to disappoint me the most about a restaurant, and when you do have any sort of, when you do get awards or there's an expectation, is that it seems to bring out the worst in diners in a way, is that, they seem to be there to really to more or less to critique you rather than to enjoy. And I don't want to be that sort of restaurant, because from a front of house perspective, I love restaurants and I love excitement and I love drama, and I would much prefer somebody to be, a pain in the arse than somebody not talk to me. I love the dialogue. So that's the sort of restaurant I want. I want conviviality. I want fun. I want I want the guest to enjoy going there and to return and return and return again. So hopefully the circle will be complete at some point.
I want to pick up on something that you said a few moments ago, and that was about being mentors for the next generation. And I know that, speaking to Martin as well, that both of you are very intent on this new project, about developing the next generation and creating real career paths and helping them to understand how to create a business and how to create a career in the industry. What's the advice that you could give to the young people in the industry at the moment?
That this is, look, it's a great career. Why would you want to work in an office when you can work in a restaurant? And especially the way, the industry has gone recently with, working hours and, standardising all of that. I mean, it's not about the grind anymore. Once upon a time it was really about, oh my God, if you go into hospitality, you're going to have to work doubles, you're going to have to work, ridiculous hours, and so that's a good thing that's sort of come out of the last couple of years. But, and I'd like to just say to people, not so much chefs, because chefs, I guess, see it differently, that, this is a real career. And the reason why we love our visa workers so much and why we're desperately trying to support them right now is because they have a different mindset. This is a career to them. It's respected. I can't tell you the amount of people that, over the years have said to me, oh, you work in a restaurant? What do you do? I say, well, it's hard to describe what I do, but I'm front of house. Oh, you're a waiter. And then they just dismiss it like it's, like it's not a real career. And it's so wrong. So, if I used to always say to my staff at Sepia, just think about it, guys. You guys are really well rewarded. In fact, think about the fact that, you could quite possibly be earning most of the people that are dining here. So it's a great career. And I would really love to be able to give career opportunities to younger people in the industry, because a lot of the young trainees that we've had in the past have just been the most amazing people. And part of the attraction of joining in the group was to show and to demonstrate that, you can still be working in this industry when you are in your 50s or in your 60s even. And groups like this can provide career paths, because you can start out being a waiter or being a kitchen hand, and in 3 years' time you might be working in HR or in marketing or something else. So I think that and that's what Martin wanted to really do, is that he knows that he has a use-by date as a chef behind a stove. And he doesn't want to be a chef behind a stove anymore. He wants to be a mentor and a leader, and to be able to train people, and to be able to, look back and say, that's why I did all that hard work, because now I can see the results of that, and something to make you really proud. Like, isn't that a good thing?
Absolutely. There's no doubt that the current circumstances are incredibly challenging, and there's always been issues in the hospitality industry that you've had to deal with that may be historical or come up with, as you mentioned, with wages. What good do you think will come out of this situation on the flip side?
As I said before, I really do believe that the great majority of restaurant operators have a good intent and a good, honest intent to do the right thing. But like all businesses, and not just restaurants, there are some that don't, and that is a shame. But I think there'll be a greater awareness now that restaurants are a real business, just like any other real business. Like I said, it can't be a folly, because there's just too much at stake. The past couple of years have been really catastrophic for restaurants in a way that, most of the general public that wouldn't understand it, and I don't expect them to. And it's really easy for somebody to sit back and say, we should know this and we should know that, and, we should have done things this way, and you should have learnt that before you opened a business. And, they're probably right. But maybe this crisis, in a way, and I don't say this lightly, but maybe this is the big corrector, because the future of restaurants is really about changing the model and being sustainable in a holistic way. And by that I mean financially sustainable as well, because people's lives, as I said previously, are at stake. Small creative businesses are not normal businesses. If you opened a fine dining restaurant, a small fine dining restaurant, for the money alone, who would you be kidding? Because, being a chef is like any other form of the arts. 1 + 1 doesn't always equal 2. And I think if you look at it this way, when you're dining in the restaurant at 7:30 at night, the chefs in the front of house haven't clocked on at 6 o'clock, to start preparing. So, I think to fix this, we need much greater understanding of our industry at government level, because whilst everyone wants a 24/7 economy, nobody really wants to pay for it.
That's a very, very good point. And it's amazing. On a lighter note, how are you going to feel when you first swing open the doors of the new restaurant?
Nervous again. Of course I'll be nervous, because that's what I'm looking forward to, those pre-service tension nerves. I'm really looking forward to seeing all of our old guests, or all of our regular guests, because, I remember so vividly at that last couple of weeks at Sepia, when some of our regulars were leaving, they were visibly upset. It was really emotional, because, a lot of them were saying to us, this is our restaurant. We have our anniversary here every year, or our birthdays here, or our kids' birthdays. It's part of their life. And many of those guests, actually even had their own table. They wouldn't sit anywhere else. The restaurant was just like that. Over 10 years you see marriages and divorces and babies and death. It's really personal. And I can't wait to do all that again. I really can't.
You're amazing. Thank you so much for today.
And you know what? You're amazing too, and I can't thank you enough And, people like yourself and, the incredible Danny Valent, who I listen to on your podcast, I know that the vast majority of the media and the food media, are doing their best, but your unwavering support of our industry is appreciated by so many. It really means the world.
Thanks for choking me up, Vicki. We'll talk soon, hey? Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we share the stories of Australia's hospo community, suppliers and producers in search of hope during this pandemic. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Stay safe, isolate and be well.